Good evening, everybody. Good to see you. Thank you for joining us for the fourth Bond Development Committee meeting. We've passed the halfway threshold for this first phase together. So excited to get to continue discussions tonight. Welcome to everybody that's joining via Zoom as well. But this evening, we're going to get a chance just to kind of regrab the purpose, get set up for hearing from some additional district experts around some key strategic areas as part of the bond planning, and then dive into some group discussion this evening and talk about it. So just regrounding in our purpose, as we know, as a committee, we're continuing to meet to flush out the capital needs of the district, informed by data, as well from program, as well as districts, as well as experience as well. We're continuing to bring together the community representative committee to help do this. And then ultimately we're working towards recommendations to the school board as well. And so we've been seeing this flow chart for a while. We're continuing to go into gathering data and getting group input and processing on that data to then get ready for some preliminary community feedback. And so tonight will help us move even closer in that direction. And so in the last meeting, we got a chance to dive into hearing from Hugo around safety and security, and then Melissa from Career and College Pathways. And tonight, we're going to get a chance to hear from some additional districts individuals that will introduce and get to talk through to hear around extracurriculars and athletics, as well as other needed projects too. But before we do that, I wanted to just share, we've been talking about how this group's coming together to go through priorities to start moving toward consensus. And so I wanted to share with you what that emerging consensus is starting to take shape because we're going to start looking at that in parallel to the discussions that we're having this evening and as we talk about what's going to be in the content for the meetings ahead. And so you'll see here that I just have on here a representation from our group discussions around the key work that was presented. And then you'll see here what the groups shared as their priorities and shared priorities based off of those discussions. And so this is helping us get to that consensus when we start talking about possible bond packages to get community input from. So just wanted to show this representation here. And we'll share this out as a follow-up to be able to give you a chance to look at this more. And we're going to be looking at this more in content over the next few bond development committees as well. But just wanted to show you a representation of what it is we're actually moving toward. And so you also see a representation here for safety and security. Now on the next slide, we have it for career and college readiness too. And so tonight's going to be adding on to this and talking about other needed projects as well as extracurriculars and athletics. One thing I want to call attention to is this right now is largely focused on the what. You'll notice that we don't have information here around the pricing and the cost of this work. That is going to be very much at the center of what we're really diving into as we go from consensus toward recommended packages. And so you'll hear a little bit of information at the end of this meeting about what goes into that and what this will start taking shape to be as we move toward the end of this first phase together here. But just wanted to take a minute just to share and kind of give this illustrative example to help ground our purpose and the work that we're doing as well.
Yeah. So if you go back to slide. Are these based off of the feedback that we gave, or each one of the presenters, what their priorities are?
Both. Okay. So this is what the presenters gave, and then what group said, yes, we agree with, we feel like this is a priority, or this is what we have some questions about that we want to dive into further, but this is a cross. Okay, there. Yeah, great question.
Do you want to go to one that has italics?
Yeah,
like right there.
So you'll notice here, and this will get shared with the recap, but for example, with safety and security around LVT cameras and panic alert systems, you'll see the italics. That means that some groups said, we think this is a priority and we agree with this. Some groups said, I'm not saying no, but I have some questions around this. And so that's what we mean by the crosswalk component of like, there might be some more digging to do in the last couple of meetings here that we'll revisit, but just wanted to give that example of nuance.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. Perfect. So as shared tonight, we're going to dive into hearing about extracurriculars and athletics, as well as other needed projects. And so with that, I'm going to ask Brian to come up and talk through some key priorities for extracurriculars and athletics.
Thanks so much, Evan. I am super excited to be here. My name is Ryan Tetrick. In fact, I'm so excited that I woke up a full hour before my alarm was set to go off. I went into my closet. I grabbed my old Letterman jacket from Glencoe High School, 1988. Okay? Took a big, deep breath in, suck it in my gut, put my arms through it, was sitting there in the living room. My wife came out and she looked at me and said, "What the hell are you doing now?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to wear this tonight for my presentation." And she said, "No, you're not." So she handed me a different jacket. At any rate, I'm just super excited because extracurricular opportunities are so important for kids. And in Hillsboro, over the last 4 years, we've been working really hard to increase our participation with kids in all different types of activities. To me, it doesn't matter what the activity is. It's just that kids have a special group that they can go to and connect with a special adult that's going to make that big difference in their life. So this is just, some information about us and the upward trajectory that we're on in getting kids to participate. And it's also really important to parents. We poll parents say, yes, I want my kid in after school programs. The problem is only 1 in 3 kids that want to be in after school programs in Washington County can actually be in part of an after school program. So when we do things after school, there's always a waiting list and we can never serve everybody. So we're working really hard to try to serve as many as we can. Thanks, Beth. So talking about, how do we set the conditions to continue to serve kids in an excellent way with extracurriculars in the Hillsboro School District really does connect to this bond because what we build and what we do will provide us with the environment and the opportunity to engage as many kids as possible. So going back 10 years to 2017, the big items that we had on the bond is we had 8 immediate occupancy elementary gymnasiums, which are basically put at your highest level when it comes down to, earthquake proof and all that type of stuff, with the idea that they could be places for community to go in the event of an earthquake. And then we were able to squeeze on 4 turf fields with lights, 1 at each high school. And so you see one of the gyms here, and this is a picture of Hill High with their one turf field. So I'm going to share with you some recommendations that are going to be somewhere in the range of around $43 million or so on some additional investments that we should consider for the next bond. Turf field with lights is a big one. If we could, we'd put turf everywhere with lights because there's a huge need for it. We have some ADA access issues, some really old bleachers that need to be replaced. We've got venues that we have hundreds of people come to that have no like running water or bathrooms. We have got some Title IX compliance projects. We've got tracks across the district that are in disrepair and are bordering on becoming unusable and dangerous. We've got some tennis surfaces that need some help. We also have some work that needs to be done in auditoriums around the district. Those are important spaces that are heavily used. And then some scoreboards and equipment. So why turf field with lights? It's not 1982 anymore. We often think that that programs are just like they used to be. Bands these days are competitive programs, and the field is as important to them as it is to the football team to practice on. So in 1982, teams were more like a lot of band and performance art things were more support activities. They've grown, they've become more competitive. We have a ton of programs that use turf fields that could use the space. Turf's good all year around. When you throw lights on it, we've got people out there until 10 o'clock at night utilizing the space. So where would we do this at? We would like to focus on the high schools. They are hubs for the community, and they need more turf. We have too many kids, too many programs that have to go off-site in order to access space. And when kids go off-site, they're either driving themselves, which we don't want to encourage or do, or we're having to transport them, and we're putting stress on our transportation department that isn't needed. So we would like to build facilities at all of our 4 high schools, multi-purpose turf that is able to be used from everything from baseball to softball to soccer to lacrosse, all band, anything like that at all 4 high schools. This is just a picture of an example of a multi-purpose turf field, just so you can get the visual of it. This may be on a baseball field setting, but we can, easily put in other fields here so that they're able to be used by a variety of different sports or activities. And then obviously the great thing about turf is it's very low maintenance for us. Right now we have a facilities department that works so hard to try to keep our roofs from not leaking, when we have this rain. But they're spending time going out and mowing these massive spaces with grass, or we're paying these specialized turf companies to come and take care of our fields. And this really allows us to be able to put some of our people in another place to be able to help with the other needs of our school district. How many of you, when you go to a place and see that there's a porta potty only, are happy about that? Not one person. Sean doesn't count. He's a little off. So we have 3 schools that don't have plumbed water outside with bathrooms. When it comes down to Hill High, Glencoe, and Century, we would like to change that so that when people come to these big meets and these big events, that they actually have a bathroom that they can go to. Another need around the district is we have some schools that have some really antiquated bleachers. Bleachers that are patched together with different types of wood, built kind of their own little stairwell, or have pretty massive gapping in them over time. So really what we would like to do is be able to provide these schools with some new kind of state-of-the-art bleachers that are automated, that can come out, that are also ADA accessible. They have cutouts so people in wheelchairs, don't stick out here on the court and feel awkward, and also handrails and stuff for people that need some assistance getting up the stairs. And also we have a couple places where the same is true when it comes to outside bleachers, needing more space with outside bleachers. This is just a quick fun example. This is Glencoe High School, and this is the path that somebody in a wheelchair would take. This sign right here says, basically, if you're in a wheelchair, just wheel yourself down lane 8 because there isn't a walkway for you. So in the middle of a track meet, you're basically putting somebody that's, not able to walk in a situation where they're either forbying around on this slope surface, or they're playing chicken with somebody that's running down the track. Title IX. So Title IX is the gender equality law that was passed in 1972. And so we do our best to comply with that, and in a variety of ways, but one of those ways is with athletics and activities. We've had 3 OCR complaints, Office of Civil Rights complaints about our facilities in the last 10 years because of some inequities, particularly with baseball and softball. So there are some certain standards that these facilities should have that we would like to reach, so that we make sure that everybody feels like they've got a facility that is adequate and fair. These are our tracks. I don't know how many of you have flown over the Midwest and looked down and seen like all the farmland that's all carved up. This is Harefield. It's been patched so many times. It's barely held together. Liberty High School. I love the patch within a patch. Work there. Glencoe and Century. You can see that black asphalt coming through cracks there and tennis courts. So some pretty major work needs to be done on those facilities. All the tracks are supposed to be redone by 2028. So we really need to get those done in this bond. It's really important that we're not going to be able to do.
Did you want to say about Hill High's tennis court?
Yeah, I mean, Hill High, this is another example of kids having to go off campus. We want to try to keep kids on campus. They have four tennis courts. And so their kids have to travel a long ways in order to access other tennis courts. Looking at providing them with some more tennis courts there to be able to fully field practices. Auditoriums, we have got some auditoriums that really need a lot of TLC besides getting all new lights and electrical. They're like 21st century grades. We also have some auditoriums that the stages are actually collapsing. And we've got problems with grade and things like that. So also some ADA compliant issues. There's a few things that need to be addressed with those to make sure that they're safe and suitable for kids around the district. Just a couple other things, about ready to finish up. But one of the things that I would love to see come out of this bond is the ability for our high schools to be able to get some support when it just comes down to replacing equipment, things like scoreboards. There are some really expensive things that sometimes fall on the shoulders of kids fundraising, which I always cringe at because that's a big barrier for a lot of families is fundraising. This mat right here, Rusty mat, costs $30,000 to replace. That costs $50,000 to replace. Those for a whole set are going to be $30,000. Helmets are tens of thousands of dollars every year for schools. So our high schools could really use some support when it comes down to just equipment for their extracurricular services. And there are many other examples beyond those of just a few. And to finish up, the other thing, this is like turf, but indoors. We consistently have issues with the amount of gym space that we have in the district when it comes to high schools. We have to take a lot of our high school programs, move them to elementary schools or move them to middle schools because we don't have enough gym space. And we have a lot of programs that, just like band, for example, cheer, they're doing all kinds of fancy throws and things like this. A lot of them can't do it in the cafeteria anymore. Right? They need to have a bigger space, high ceiling. They need a space where they can, perform and practice, and also growing and just allowing the school to be able to make that many more teams. We never want to cut kids because we don't have enough gym space for them. But yet sometimes that happens because it's just not realistic for us to be able to have another team. So all of these things are not cheap. But when I think about the importance of them, I always go back, to the physical and mental well-being of our kids. I think that extracurriculars are one of the most important protective factors that we have for our kids. And I think it's just been
You
great.
sped through this. If you want to expand on anything, you should. But we can also take questions. So
I think I'm done. I was just going to say, is that the one?
I guess this was one more. But it's really same.
Those are pictures of
Same
gyms.
topic.
Storage and security for things like equipment and instruments.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah, we always, schools always need more storage space for sure. It's a big thing when it comes down to holding all the equipment that they have, storage space. But I guess time for questions. Is that right?
Yeah, and we're not going to head into a short break because you haven't been sitting here long enough yet. But again, if you wanted to expand on anything or if there's questions, there's time for it. You went fast.
Okay, good.
You went fast.
You told me in the pre-meeting to go fast, so I just did my job. No, I'm happy to take questions and
Yeah, so, Ryan, you mentioned that, 1 in 3 kids who wants to participate in extracurricular activity has availability to. Will any of these increase the percentage of kids that will be able to participate in extracurriculars?
yeah, so absolutely. When you think about the way that our high schools could be utilized for the community, a lot of people don't know this, but we have an IGA with the city of Hillsboro, which basically says that we share space with them and they share space with us. So anything that we add on is going to be able to make more opportunities for kids to participate, not only kids at our high schools, but kids that are in our youth programs, or it could be, kids that are in HPR programs. I'll give you an example. We have got programs like if you were to turf these fields and you've got a field that is multi-purpose that can do baseball and softball and all those types of things. You've created, another opportunity with lights to be able to have programs come in, particularly in the evening, to be able to use those spaces. So we're basically expanding the amount of time that we have for those spaces to be used. The other thing that I didn't really mention that it just made me think of this is that it used to be back when I was, playing, participating in things, it was just a season. Okay. Now everything is like year round because the OSAA has changed the policies around practice time. And so there's a lot of pressure on these teams just to continue playing and practicing and all this kind of stuff. And so what we've just seen is that we're just overrun with the number of requests we get and the lack of service time that we have for the programs.
And maybe I should have led with this. So if we turf more fields, that will allow more places for people to practice and stuff like that. But there are also funds to hire additional coaches. So there's like a 4th football team that gets out. I went to a super small school. I don't know how many football squads that a big school has. Are there going to be coaches? Are there going to be other kids for them to play against? So again, I go back to that, like 1 in 3 gets to participate. Extra turf field's fantastic. My daughter's in band, so she asked to practice in the parking lot. So I'd love big turf stuff, especially at Century. That being said, I don't see that being a direct correlation to more kids to being able to participate. So maybe you can help me better understand how these would help more kids be able to participate. I think I'm missing that stuff.
I would just say that it comes down to time and space, with the kids. We have got these particular ones at the high school are only, going to be beneficial for younger kids when the younger kids are able to come over and participate there. Okay. So the biggest benefit is going to be, for the high school program so that they're able to have more access time onto the services that they want to be on and not have to leave, the schools as much. Like you mentioned, it's awkward when you do have a band that is in the parking lot and you're a visitor and you come over with your car and you're not expecting to run into the tuba player.
Can we also just, obviously, I know where you're going with your question too, and just a point of clarification that your statistic was 1 in 3 in the county, not just Hillsboro School District, countywide. It's just kind of addressing a countywide issue. Obviously, this bond can't supply more coaches or staff. We've kind of talked about that in the past. What this is about infrastructure. And I think Ryan's answer is correct in terms of if we have the places to put them, then that at least removes one barrier from the equation. It doesn't solve the whole equation because we do need operational funds to pay for coaching and whatnot. However, the other aspect that you mentioned of if you have the equipment and you're not having to ask kids to go out and fundraise exorbitant amounts, that's that also lowers the barrier to entry for some students who are completely turned off by asking for money, like I was as a kid, but I still had to go door to door trying to sell spaghetti feed tickets, which I hated. But so a couple of the elements that can help address the problem of, the overall issue, it's not going to be 100% fixed because we can't get operational dollars out of this bond. So
this bond's not going to help 10 years from now with, the coaching, thing, but hopefully it can help, put some of the environment together for those people that are there. Carolyn?
Question from you. You mentioned the cost savings of having turf fields over what we currently have in a lot of situations, in addition to the extra usage. Can you either provide us a little more detail, or at some point, what are we talking about in terms of how much do we spend now on our maintenance on these fields, and how much is our actual fee? Sorry, speaking like an old school board member, but just kind of curious what those numbers look like and how what we would realize from that. So if it's saving this much, we can, continue to maintain or purchase or put those funds to something else.
Yeah, I think my point is that it definitely saves us time when it comes down to our employees, because we don't have to put much time into it. I would have to probably defer to Dave Peterson on the question of how much we spend when it comes down, taking care of grass, but, grass needs fertilizer and it needs a lot of water, and that's not cheap,
I'm curious for the results.
Yeah. So,
I can tell you it's $500 for a pallet of turfs, for one pallet of 24 bags for a softball or baseball field. It is $72 for a box of paint to put the lines in. And we're doing that every week on one field.
I know the dollars are huge. I just kind of wanted to know what those dollars. Sure, we can do that.
yeah, we can research that. I just don't want to throw out some random number for you because I don't have that information. Katie?
I've heard a lot about high schools, and I know that we have a lot of turf fields also for several of our elementaries. But I'm speaking from the Century feeder. We don't really have we don't have any options at the elementary level with a turf. And so even adding a turf field at an elementary level in a feeder helps out baseball, soccer. So many different feeder programs that feed into the high school. But I just feel like at least Century is going out into other feeders to find access in fields when we need turf access. And we're kind of hitting a limit. Like there were several baseball games this season that had to be canceled because we didn't have an option.
Yeah, we've also destroyed, I shouldn't say destroyed, that sounds malicious. We have altered some of our schools over the years with some bonds, and due to those changes of the schools, we've had to wipe out fields, because we're expanding onto, the actual school itself. So when you talk about baseball and softball fields, definitely something that I could see youth programs really using at the high schools. And just by putting in the turf fields at the high school, the one turf field that they have at the high school, 10 years ago, we've already seen that we've got youth programs that are getting into those fields and being able to utilize them to some degree. It's probably not happening at Century. Century has the least amount of square footage of turf of any feeder. So if you were putting me which place probably needs the most, I would say Century feeder could use the most upgrades in that way. Yes, sir.
But I want to go back to the 1 in 3 kids that currently participate. If you're and I agree, some of these improvements are definitely needed, and all of that. That will lower maintenance costs as well. But you said something about increasing your capacity with a lot of these improvements, right? I thought we were just told here recently we have a decreasing population of students. Why increase capacity if the number of students will continue to decline over the next few years?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think there's a difference between the number of students and who's participating. We're actually seeing that our participation levels are increasing. So that's what we're seeing. If you take that away from maybe the overall level, you know, I mean, this last year in the Hillsboro School District, we had over 4,000 high school kids, you know, participating in an OSAA activity or athletic. And that's not decreasing. So we're you know confident that we're always going to have kids that want to participate. I'm just hopeful that we can continue to make conditions for that.
During that presentation, because the first thing popped in my mind was decreasing population of students and not participation in extracurricular activity.
Yeah, here you go. Thank you for that. Mary Kay? Is it something I did wrong, or why am I getting more questions than everybody that we were before me?
There's nothing wrong. Well, you talk too fast.
They were telling me to go fast, so I just been about going fast. Mary Kay?
I'm coming from a working condition with my first question for coaches' office spaces or workspaces that are in those outdoor areas that you said are now year-round, having HVAC availability for heating and cooling, because they're finding themselves, especially like this past summer, that they were having to limit their time because it was so hot in their offices, or it was, now that we're coming up on the cooler weather, it's the opposite. So is coaches' offices or workspaces being considered to be heated and cool?
Can you give me a specific example? I'm not
I
sure what
heard prominently from Liberty High School
about which space.
that the coaches' office and workspaces that are in the fields.
I don't know about that. I feel like that probably falls under the HVAC folks. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I would defer to
So
them.
Liberty High School office space and
Yes,
coaching space?
work tickets have been filed, so I don't know where they're at in the process.
We can look into that.
Perfect. Storage facilities, making sure that we have secure and adequate storage facilities, because a lot of our band programs are resorting to like trailers, and they're finding them, they're getting broken into, their equipment's getting stolen. And then for cheer and dance, having dedicated spaces, because they're often in line to compete with other athletics that are also trying to compete for those same spaces. And being a host parent to exchange students, I've driven students to school as early as 5:30 in the morning so that they can practice in the adequate space. And so this is a hardship on those teams. And then auditoriums, are we considering also improving our sound systems? I went to some wonderful musicals, and the sound system cuts out, and it's heartbreaking when you know that that's that student's one and only solo. So just trying to help make sure our performing arts.
Yeah, I was told that it's part of the CTE presentation. That auditoriums, yeah, they need new lights and 21st century electrical, the connections, all that stuff. So yes.
And can CTE help build any of those like hurdles?
Can what?
We'll take the 30,000.
I don't believe it.
Oh, is that?
Claudia, did you have a
3D
question?
printed hurdle.
Yeah, I just want to say,
Always okay with it, sure.
with the turf situation, not fly out my bundle. With the turf situation, I know that our baseball, as you know, we have 3-4 teams, and we only have one field, and we have to cancel games all the time in the spring and spread ourselves all over the place for our kids to be able to practice one and have games. And on a personal note, one of our Peter Elementary School, my wife is their PE teacher there, and through work with Mr. Peter over here, she has been offering soccer through Get on the Bus, which has been amazing. And I don't know, a couple hundred kids have gone through her the last 3 years she's been working there. And kids and families have had to travel all the way to Athlone, which is beautiful and wonderful. But if we had a turf at Glencoe High School, they could ride their bikes, walk, and families would be able to access something that is in their feeder a lot closer to having to drive and go all the way there, which is a hardship for it's Lincoln Street Elementary, which would be a hardship for them. So having something that's accessible within the neighborhood school would be amazing. So having turf at Glencoe as well as all the other high schools within the feeder would be just a huge help.
Yeah, having one turf field at a high school is not like
Yeah.
the standard anymore.
Yeah.
If you go to other districts around us, you're not going to see usually that they just have access to one turf field.
Yeah.
It's very limited.
Yeah, you're having to cancel stuff all the time.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
I just wanted to come back to a couple of points that were made a little bit earlier back to the turf fields and the capacity. I think it's really important with the demographics question that maybe while the enrollment numbers seem to be flattening out or dropping, that point about community access, but as we also see socioeconomic needs of a lot of enrollees, they rely on the school provided programs, the community programs tied to schools. So I think that's just something else to keep in mind in terms of the demand use for these facilities, because they may not be able to afford going and playing in a club sports program or what other band options rather from a private standpoint. But one thing I just back to the observation, the question is, it is around capacity. I'm glad we're highlighting more turf investments and facility investments at the high schools. I definitely echo the point of maybe adding more into this bond conversation, including more middle schools or elementary schools in addition, because it distributes and creates more capacity. The one thing saying observation of the capacity is let's try to also make sure we don't create more conflicts amongst our different sports groups or interest groups, because you can lay a soccer field over the top of a softball field's outfield and say, look, we've turfed that field, but have you really added more capacity, especially if you see fall softball than competing with fall soccer? And I think that's important too, is we go back to, I think, we raised earlier, trying to appeal to the voters. I think we will have far more families across multiple extracurricular activities that can really demonstrate we are creating dedicated capacity for them, not competed capacity amongst them.
Thanks for your perspective. Yes, sir.
You mentioned about community use of the fields. I suspect that the school district, has, they gain income from, renting out the fields to athletic, like adult leagues or adult basketball or community theater or whatnot. 13 more fields too. Has there been kind of an idea? We're saving money on maintenance, but we're also generating more activity. Which means we can rent it out more and generate more income. Could some of that income be more directed towards the folks that can't afford to do that?
Yeah.
Some of that money goes toward those folks that, the fundraising and.
Yeah, great question. So what we really try to do in Hillsboro is make things as accessible to our residents as possible by not charging fees. But yes, we do have fees that we would charge to certain groups if they're not from Hillsboro, they're not really Hillsboro groups or they're for-profits. They would absolutely be charged. So every year in the Hillsboro School District, we bring in around $350,000 to $400,000 in rental fees from the current facilities that we have. That includes gyms and other usages, whether it's auditoriums or things like that. So yes, do I know what the increase would be with this? No, we haven't gone that far. Don't want to be presumptuous about, what the voters want to approve, how much space we're talking about, but it would not hurt, that's for sure.
Just a couple things. I'll try to be brief, but in terms of the question the gentleman here spoke to about how we increase capacity with numbers going down, and you and I have talked a lot about that participation is on the rise, and most programs, along with new programs being added by OSAA, as well as community programs from a Parks and Rec perspective. We're also providing a bunch of programs that are for recreational use, sports, and entry into it. And so as Ryan's capacity needs increase and we're using those same facilities, there's a direct impact. So we're not allowed, especially youth basketball, volleyball, things like that, we're seeing numbers expand, but that's putting pressure on extracurricular in the school district, which is already having pressure to have Title IX and other stuff. So I think that's a really crucial point that while numbers may be flat or whatever they're doing, we're seeing more participation. We all know what that equates to.
right? And then, so that's one point I just wanted to add to that. In terms of the theater stuff that came up, I feel like you have a little bit in here, and maybe it's in another section, but as we're looking at this, just expansion and audio visual, there's a lot of parents that support that world and community members. I think there's an opportunity, and usually the theaters end up, in my experience as a theater kid, we had the broken sound system, lights and stuff. So I think any way that you can highlight that's really important to me, and I don't really see that represented here as well as I maybe could, but maybe it's another section. And then I didn't see anything about water, swim, so in this section. So I don't know how we want to address that. I know that's kind of a hot bush, and there's some conversations, but I just want to, as we're looking at this, as Parks and Rec is looking at pool options right now, and we have an aging facility, I just think it's really important that we consider that and not just as a community asset, shared use asset that benefits the large portion of the park. Looks like Beth.
I'll let
He might want to talk part of it.
I'll let Beth talk about the pool. I'll just say about the woe is me, act about, the drawing the kids. Okay. Every single program thinks that they're the ones that are the most overlooked. So just know that. And we care about, like I said at the very beginning, it's not about what kids do. It's that they're connected to a group. That's why we talked about the importance. We have to do some things for our auditoriums as well. We'll let Beth talk about the pool.
Thank you. I just wanted to let everybody know that we have engaged with some preliminary conversations with the city of Hillsboro about the possibility of the school district partnering on one of a couple of different projects that they're looking at in terms of pool renovation and or expansion. And I was told that this was public information because they presented it to the Parks Commission. So a couple things that the city is currently looking at is doing renovation and expansion of the outdoor pool at Shark to make that an actual 50-meter competition size pool with potentially retractable cover, something super cool to make it a little bit more year-round. So that's one project. Another would be obviously the installation of a pool recreation complex. They've got the space set aside in their renderings at Hidden Creek. Of course, that's a more costly project. That might be a little bit more difficult to get off the ground, but each project comes with its own challenges in terms of available funding sources and system development charges, which allow things to be funded that are brand new, but not necessarily renovating old things. But yet the old thing would be cheaper. And so there's considerations there. It's something that, like I said, super preliminary on our part. We will be very happy to hear your feedback on that type of thing and whether or not it's something we should potentially poll our community on. We have found success in the past, times where we can utilize it's not an insignificant amount of money, but let's just say it's in the scheme of life, a relatively small amount for a large organization to contribute, which on our own, that might not do a whole lot. But when it's added to some of the city capacity and potentially other partners, we can do more altogether than any of us could do alone. Something we realized with our dark fiber project that we partnered on last time. This could be another example of something like that would not only benefit our Hillsboro students that do swim team, that take swim lessons, we could, but also obviously our community who uses those resources. And then just one more thing I wanted to say, just not to belabor the point, but just so that we're maybe all kind of thinking along the same lines, that statistic that Ryan quoted at the beginning about Washington County, keep in mind there's just over 611,000 people in Washington County, and let's say around 100,000 of those are school-age kids. So if we're talking about 30% of them or 33% of them accessing, that's still, 60,000 kids who may or may not have access. And while there has been a slight decline in school enrollment, which isn't necessarily the same thing as a decline, which there's also been a decline in population, but it's kind of different when we talk about enrollment in our schools versus kids in our community, because when kids perhaps disenroll from our schools, they might be in private school, they might be in virtual schools, they might be homeschooled, there's all sorts of places they can be, but they still are kids in our community that could be taking advantage of community-based sports and activities. I just wanted us to keep that in mind. So when we are saying our enrollment's kind of flattening, it's in a flat spot right now, slightly declining. It's not necessarily the same thing as there not being children in our community who need access to these kinds of programs. And it is one of the key priorities in our strategic plan right now is trying to ensure that as many students as possible are connected to at least one extracurricular activity, as we find that really enhances their engagement, their attendance, and connection to school in general. So thank you so much, Ryan. You want to
Make one.
wrap it up?
Just one last comment. I just want to thank everybody. I can feel your passion for extracurriculars and through your questions, and I really, really deeply appreciate that. I just want to let everybody know I've been an administrator at the high school level, the middle school level, the elementary school level. I now work at the district office. Everything that we've talked about in this bond stuff is important. And selfishly, I would love to just say, like, here's $100 million worth of extracurricular stuff. But having gone through this 10 years ago, I know that may not, be reasonable, that we may not be able to do every single thing that we want to do. So that's why we have this group, and we can have discussions about that and put something ultimately together that the voters are going to mark yes on to the Hillsboro School District. Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan. I think we're going to have Whitney's presentation now, and after that, we'll go into a quick break. But that's no pressure. You take as much time as you need.
I love that I'm going to talk about food before a break, right? Get you all hungry. I'm Whitney Ellersig. I'm the Executive Director for Nutrition Services, if we haven't met. And so thank you so much for having me here and letting me talk about the wonderful things that my team does. So just so you know, my department, Nutrition Services Department, operates USDA child nutrition programs. We currently serve 37 locations in the district, as well as additional partners within the community. Last year, we ended up serving over 2.7 million meals and snacks to our students. And that can range from ages 3 to 21. So we service our pre-K, our Head Start, and the Community Action Program, as well as our students in the Community Transition Program, whether they have an IEP or we're servicing all of our students. We serve them through breakfast, lunch during the school day, after school snacks, and then we also have our summer program where we're the ones providing the free lunches in the parks, as well as our summer programs such as the bilingual program, the early literacy program, and others. So lots of different services that we're providing throughout the entire school year. So we are seeing a need, and why I'm here today, because we are self-funded. We actually do not rely on general funds. We receive funds for every meal that we serve correctly to a student, and there's a lot of rules tied to that. And so we have to pay for our food, our labor, our equipment, our supplies, the maintenance of that through that funding. And that is not a whole lot. So we can do it here and there, but the bigger projects and the bigger renovations do need added support. In the 2017 bond, we had $1.6 million invested in our department, mostly to the warehouse freezer expansion, and also to Reedville Elementary, which has a beautiful kitchen and cafeteria at this time, but largely the rest of our kitchens were untouched. So right now, I'm recommending about $9 million in additional investments, but this is covering a multitude of different kitchens, as well as our essential distribution warehouse. Our goal is to make sure that we're able to match the need of what our community is showing us right now. We have been able to expand all meals for free to all students at HSD. And so with that, we've seen an increase in participation, and we'll continue to offer an expansion of our services as we are able to do so. But right now, we're seeing an increase in our meal services, but also a decrease in our capacity, specifically with refrigeration and freezers. And we want to make sure that we're not only bringing the best foods, but handling them appropriately. So we'll talk about it a little bit more later, but our refrigeration is really, really minimal, particularly at the district warehouse. Last year, we spent almost $900,000 on fresh produce with a very small cooler. Because we are maxed out there, we're having to receive our cheese and put it in the freezer. That can be done. However, as you know, the quality will decrease, and we really want to emphasize quality and make sure that students are enjoying the food that we're offering to them. Thank you for doing this, thanks. So what we're going to be looking at is equipping and making sure that our kitchens are equipped and upgraded. Specifically, we have kitchens that only have reach-in refrigerators and reach-in freezers rather than walk-in units. And we'll have some pictures to describe that if you're not familiar with what that would look like. We want to increase our storage capacity. We'd also like to reconfigure and upgrade some of our service lines for ADA compliance to make sure all of our students have access to our kitchens and service lines. That would also come with an upgrade to our electrical and plumbing, and then specifically a Glencoe kitchen for a full facelift. No, all right. I knew you'd like that. So one of the other things that was mentioned through Dave Peterson's work is generators. Right now at our warehouse, our walk-in freezers, our large freezers that house the majority of the food that we send out to the kitchens, are not part of the backup generator system. So if the power goes down, we actually have team members that will run over, turn on and plug in our refrigerated trucks and try to move as much product into it as possible to try to prevent food loss. It's because I don't hear.
Keep talking. There we go.
And so we really, that was already presented. I did want to mention it here that we have another interest in those generators as well. This would increase our capacity to respond during those power losses, prevent food loss, but also, as noted with the schools that are called out there, South Meadows and Glencoe, it also would help us be more equipped to respond to any community emergencies that we might need to be able to feed kids or feed community members should there be an emergency that we are asked to support or partner with. So our goal is to really meet the need of our community. And we want to also do that by increasing our efficiency and improving workplace safety. Those are two really big pieces for us. Expanding all food meals, as I said, really saw an increase in this last year with our services, but also saw, to tie into Ryan's presentation earlier, we actually, in providing the after-school snacks, free snacks, we were able to provide that to 35 programs or activities in the last year. So just to add and say thank you to Ryan's group for making that possible. So we were able to do that. We also expanded our outreach in the summer program. I was able to identify 4 locations that were deemed as rural during the summer program. So in addition to the parks and the school sites that I mentioned, Holiday, North Plains, Groner, and Farmington View were deemed rural. That meant we were able to provide 5 breakfasts and 5 lunch for every child ages 1 to 18 in a household for a family to pick up at one time each week. And we actually served 16,000 meals during the summertime, just with that program alone. So that also was huge. Not what I expected, but super happy with it because it was way more than I thought it would be. And what also meant that we had to seek additional refrigeration. We actually had to bring in additional refrigeration to Glencoe High School. We're producing all these meals and share space in the cafeteria. Thank you, Claudia. With cheer and color guard and
That's always in our gym. Yeah.
all the things. And so that has really seen the need for drive in the space. I will also say just recently, given what we're headed into potentially next week, there's been an ask for us to find additional refrigeration space, freezer space, and storage space for any donated foods or food pantries, food backpacks to support our families and our communities. And so we are trying to work with our school communities as best we can to find that, but we are super tight. And you'll see some pictures that indicate that right now. So why walk-ins? This is Indian Hills, represented here today. So there are a number of schools listed here that only have these reach-in units that you can see here. And in Indian Hills, there's actually a backside. So you have this bank, this one in the front, on the other side, and then some other units that are also in the kitchen. And all this is needed to help serve just Indian Hills for breakfast and lunch and after school snack. This is inside 2 of the units. You can see the nice Tetris game that's going on here, little Jenga. And what happens is that this actually, with how full this is, it doesn't have enough airflow. So it actually can impact the usability, but also the maintenance needs. It can cause the units to go down when you have too much up close to the fan and not have enough airflow to circulate within the unit. This one is on an alarm that is unique. All of our reach-in units are not on alarms to let us know when they go down. So if we were to lose power or have a malfunction in any of these locations, we typically will walk into the school and find the unit at 60 degrees and have to throw away all the food. So by transitioning to a walk-in unit, we can put alarms and prevent all the food from going to waste, but also be ready to serve our students. So we would have better capacity. Also from a workplace safety standpoint, this means we're handling the food a lot more. Moving it in, moving it out, trying to find what we need. Whereas in a walk-in, you can see it visibly and have a better chance of having less handling in and out of the food space. So that was Indian Hills. This is Rosedale. They both serve about the same number of students. Enrollment might be different, but for me, it's about participation. So our teams serve about the same amount of kids out of both kitchens. So over here are the regions, the doors to the external part. And these are what you see when you open the doors. So as you can see, we can put carts, racks, have everything spaced out, ready to use and available. So why increase capacity in our warehouse? So our department functions on a central distribution model, meaning that all of the food comes to the warehouse, except for milk and yogurt through our dairy. And then we receive all that food, and then we have a team of drivers that drive it out to the kitchens. Our current freezer is very limited. So we actually use offsite storage, and while it's a very good deal, $11,000, just slightly over, is a very good deal. The amount of work that it takes to manage that additional inventory can be 65 trips in a year by our drivers. Each trip takes about 2.5 hours, which is about 160 hours annually to manage that offsite storage. Just to give a good picture of what we're talking about, our team receives 8 to 10 full tractor trailer loads weekly. So that is about 200,000 pounds of food. If it's a startup, like at the beginning of the school year or after a break, it can be in excess over 300,000 pounds of food in a week. Then our drivers distribute about 5,100 cases of mixed items, frozen, dry produce, and bread. All right. For the service line piece, for the reconfiguration, again, using Indian Hills and Rosedale as our comparator, except for this middle picture here. So this is the back side of Indian Hills. And you can see that it just has these 3 hot wells here to hold hot food with very little room on either side. Just on the other side of this door is the dish room. On the front side, this is at Butternut Creek. But I use this picture because you can see 3 adults that are almost blocking, completely covering that service line, just from a size reference. This is Rosedale. Again, same number of students that we feed. And this is the front, this is the back. You can see the extensive line and space, plus additional storage underneath. And then this is the front. While I don't have our lovely board members in front of this one, we do have a salad bar here. And this salad bar is usually about 2 to 3 people lengthwise. So you can kind of get the comparison of how much more space we have. So why is this important? Well, one, this doesn't showcase the ADA compliance. We'll see that in the next one about Brown. But in this one, for elementary schools, the important piece and just as much of a resource for us as money is time. And Ryan spoke about this too. So if you ever looked at a principal's schedule of class time, academic time, lunch time, it's like this beautiful rainbow colored spreadsheet with supervision times. I see all the principals going, yep. It is truly an art form. But this always seems to be the tricky piece. So we really want to make sure that our kids are coming through the line as quickly as possible, still in a welcoming way, but are coming through in an efficient way. And the longer that we can extend the service line, the more that we're able to keep them flowing through. So this actually would help us to improve and make more our services more efficient for our students and ease some of that pressure point that a lot of principals feel. So for Brown Middle School is a very interesting case. It is not standard. It actually has a service, or students actually line up in the hallway in order to come through the middle of the kitchen to get to the cafeteria. So has anybody been to Brown before? Yeah, so have you seen this piece? You know what I'm talking about? So these line stanchions actually have to be set out every day to try to navigate students through the lines of the hallway while trying not to impact the adjacent classrooms, right, with noise. And then come through, this is the doorway, you walk through the doorway, through the middle of the kitchen, and in between these two lines is the cooking equipment to go out into the cafeteria. So this space is very short. And not only that, you'll see the width of the doorway is not ADA compliant, even though door handles are not ADA compliant. And so a lot of our students cannot fit and navigate this pathway to receive a meal. So with that, and also you can see here, this is called a tray slide. So we can't use it. It's on the other side for student lines. We can't use it because if you flip it out, the kids couldn't walk through. So now we have students that have to hold on and we have to navigate different services where there's lots of spills because we can't use the tray slide because they can't fit. Okay, so we want to make sure that that's more accessible. We have a better flow. There's a lot of time between my team and the administrators at Brown, always trying to navigate how to have it be efficient, not impact the classroom activities while other students are having lunch, and still make it accessible. All right, Glencoe. Or Glencoe. Right now, we have just the door for students to enter into the service line area is broken. So we actually need to do a replacement of that door, and it's a roll-up door in order to be fire code compliant. Our kitchen hood system has failed multiple times just in my time here, and I started in February. The walk-in freezer door freezes shut regularly, is unpredictable, and there's also a ramp that goes up into the freezer that is unsafe for our team to use. The majority of the service line wells, so we saw the service lines in the other picture, are unusable. They do not heat. We're not allowed to use them, and will have to be replaced. And the survey space is inadequate. Currently, we're serving 650 students each day for lunch. And that is such a narrow space that it's actually discouraging more students from participating. So while 650 students sounds like a lot, it's actually the least amount of students that we serve in a high school. Comparably, Century, which has a similar enrollment, we're serving over 800. So with a better service line and access, we could potentially not dissuade students from eating with us. But we also want to make sure, again, that we're getting over 300 students through the lunch line in an efficient way so they have time to enjoy their food and they get back to class. It also has additional old cabinetry, a need for an upgrade in the design, and loud chipped quarry tile floor that does not aid in the efficiency either. So with that, we'd like to be able to see these changes happen. We'd like to make sure that we're able to respond to our community needs, and also then reduce our maintenance costs. We're currently, I mean, last year we spent $158,000 just on parts, and we have 2 internal full-time maintenance folks, not to mention the additional needs that we need from general maintenance.
Questions for Whitney?
Thank you so much for the absolutely clarification. I think on one of my very first slide, there's something about semi-scratch made foods. Can you help me understand the correlation on how any of these upgrades will increase the amount of semi-scratch foods? Because it sounds like there's also a cost associated with higher costs associated with making those semi-scratch foods.
So a lot of our spaces are adequate for a heat and serve model. We do have some sites that have slight infrastructure for more of a scratch model that we're not utilizing. A lot of the sites that we're looking at, we would need to increase our storage for raw ingredients in order to better implement those speed scratch items. So for example, and we just did one recently, but it was able to do that because we're utilizing some shelf stable items too. We just taught the team how to hand roll all their burritos rather than making purchasing and eating a pre-prepared. So instead of buying a frozen burrito, we're buying the tortilla shells, the cheese, and the beans, either the taco meat, the chicken, whatever the fillings may be, and then the team's rolling it. So by improving our storage capacity, we're able to increase our raw ingredients as opposed to pre-prepared frozen items. That's helpful. Yes.
Well, first of all, a compliment. So I usually make my kids lunch, but they did participate. They go to Century in the cultural week, whatever it was a couple weeks ago.
School lunch week.
School lunch week, yeah. So that was absolutely amazing. Thank you for doing that. Yeah, absolutely love that. And I don't know if this would be with you or a different part in the bond. But make my kids at lunch again. That gets limited oftentimes. They don't have a place to heat stuff up. Where would microwaves go? Like who's part of the bond would that be with? If you microwaves.
That's a great question. I was just focused on our team's services, so I wasn't because that's what we're obligated to focus on.
Great.
Food from home with microwaves has typically been supported through local efforts, and so I don't know where that one would fall, but it's certainly something that we can look at.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Do you anticipate with, the coming changes, hopefully we avoid next week, that you're going to have to store even more food than maybe we did kind of touch on it? But
yeah, I think, so right now for our breakfast participation, we're seeing anywhere from like 18 to 30% breakfast participation. So I am putting out messages for principals and others to remind community members that they can rely on us for our services that might help alleviate some of the pressures at home. But with that, if we see an increase, even by a few percentages, that will increase the amount of food that we have to bring in, and we'll need to find a way to store. And so that might mean we lean on the additional freezer storage at need a little bit more. It may mean that I need to see if we have the electrical capacity to buy some single units to plug into place. So we will identify what we can to make it happen. We always want to feed more kids. So I think that's where our hope is that we continue to see that increase in participation. We want all kids to eat with us. We want it to be a welcoming experience. We want to change that stigma around school food, but it will require us to get creative in the meantime before, if we're selected to be part of the bond package, it would mean we'd have to get creative in the meantime. Go ahead.
are you guys involved with the food pantries at school?
It's a great question. So we are not involved with the food pantries at the school at this time. We are, at the end of the year, I had the team try a new effort of collecting all the perishable food that we wouldn't be able to use in between school and summer. And we made a centralized donation to Birch Community Services. And so those are things that we can do. The thing that I was talking about earlier was collaborating with storage. So for our community partners who are creating those backpack programs, the food baskets, the markets, things like that, we want to be able to partner with them well and create storage capacity. So for example, one that I can think of, like Eastwood and Newberry, we only have regions. So their ability to store something from a food donation is very small to minimal. It's really not there. So we would have to look at our middle school or high school to assist with that, or even our warehouse to help with that effort. And we want to be good partners. We want to make sure that we're able to support efforts to feed our community.
Do you ever see a future where it sounds like the centralized warehouse is very costly and time consuming? Do you see a future where the schools can develop more local storage, where the Cisco's of the world are getting on that demand of delivering to the school?
I don't. My colleagues actually are very jealous of us having a warehouse. Any district that has a warehouse, that is a coveted thing. And that's because there's an increase in minimums that are happening with the distributors. Unfortunately, Cisco has not been able to deliver for us very well. So we've actually been working with manufacturers to get direct deliveries, which also helps us get a better buying price. So we'll actually take truckloads directly from manufacturers in order to bypass Cisco, or the Cisco's of the world. So they are a partner, but we can't always rely on them to provide all of our needs. So with that being said, if a district nearby does not have a central warehouse, and it does require direct deliveries to all 54, 56 of their schools, and they're only able to work with 4 distributors. So it really minimizes who they can work with, and particularly even some of the local folks too. And so that can be a deterrent. It also can increase costs because they will add a delivery fee to each one. It also would mean more trucks and deliveries to each school site, which is not really ideal when you're thinking about kids on campus, where they have to go to. Not every school has a proper delivery dock. And with all the activities that we heard happens on a high school campus alone, I'll use Glencoe, for example, the driveway to our kitchen actually goes all around the tennis courts, by the track, and the band practices on that driveway. So you have to be very careful not to hit. So by using our trucks, we actually minimize the number of deliveries to the milk and mining truck. So that really is better from a safer delivery standpoint. It also means less outside folks coming to the school as well. We have my drivers who are district employees. And so that really helps to, not to say that our partners aren't safe, but it just is reassuring to know that we know who's coming to the schools. If that makes sense. Okay. That was a long answer. I can totally go into that one. But just know we have a really good model here. It's been studied in other districts, and it's been considered a gold star model to have a central distribution, a central warehouse operation like we have here in Hillsboro. Thank you, Whitney.
All right, now we're going to enter a 3-minute break here, and then we'll come back together to hear from Rusty on transportation before wrapping up. In 3 minutes, and we'll come back together at 5:19.
My name is Rusty Bingham. I'm the Executive Director of Transportation here for Hillsboro. I'm in my 4th month, so I'm learning a lot, really enjoying it. We have a great department. We have a great group of individuals. Currently, we are routed to transport over 11,000 students to and from school each day. And last year, we did over 1.7 million miles the whole year in transport. So as many know, we have a very large district area, from the hills to the north, all the way down to Bald Peak, a lot of miles each day. And our buses do a lot of miles. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about that. All right. So from what I was told with the last one, transportation was awarded a new camera system and a new GPS system. And then they also got a new facility on Jacobson Road, north of Liberty. that now houses half of the fleet up there. So we have a little bit better positioning to manage driving to get to the routes in different areas like that. There was no investment in the fleet at that time. And so to follow my recommendations will be to invest $2 million a year in the investment of the fleet, and then a $600,000 investment in a new routing system. And we'll talk individually about those as we get through these slides. So as I talked about with this new investment, $2 million, that should allow us to purchase anywhere between 10 to 12 new buses each school year. That'll allow us to, in essence, create a line that is manageable to purchase buses, whereas in further slides, you'll see that we go year to year when it comes to purchases. We see how much money we get from ODE for depreciation of our buses, and then we see how much money is in the general funds that can help us purchase buses. And I think shifting some of that to this bond will really help make sure that our buses stay current and that we're able to invest in newer technologies to keep kids and our fleet in the best shape that we can. Also, our current routing system that we use was invented or created probably in the early 2000s, and it hasn't changed much. It's updated annually, but it's still a SQL system. It's very old, outdated, and there's a lot better systems on the market that can create a lot of success and safety for the students of the district that I feel like would be very valuable. It also created a tablet system for my drivers that would take the current system of paper route sheets when they drive their bus. It's a paper, almost like back in the early 2000s when you wanted to go somewhere and you print out route sheets with left and rights. That's what our bus drivers are still doing today when it has come to driving the routes. This new system would be a GPS one that would be turn by turn. You're fine. Thanks.
Sorry.
So we're regularly replacing the fleet. It makes it more reliable for our families, for our students. They won't have to worry about bus breakdowns or running late, which is an issue that happens now and again here on our current fleet. It improves our emissions. Currently our fleet is made up of 77% diesel buses. A lot of those are getting a little bit older, so the technology is improving where the emissions is a lot less. And also we're shifting to more of a propane style bus we even have electric vehicles that are on the road that are helping with the emissions, which help in those communities that are in a lot of traffic areas that vehicles are already polluting a lot. It just helps reduce the particulate matter in those. And then the new routing system, the biggest one that I think that the parents will really appreciate is all of the ones that I look at come with a free mobile app for the parents. So they're able to see real-time data as when the bus will be coming to pick up their kid. I also want to have ID badges for the kids so they have to scan on and off the buses so their parents will know when they get on and off the bus. It seems like we get a lot of calls saying, hey, I don't know where my kid is. Can you help me find them? This will really cut down on that because now we will have real-time data as to where they're at all times. So why new buses? Currently, our buses are on average about 9 years old, and on average, they have about 90,000 miles on them. Buses do a lot of miles each year, and we need to make sure that we're investing in the replacement of them. Here's the graph since 2008. You can kind of see how inconsistent we are at purchasing buses. I would like to make that line as straight as possible so that we make sure that we're keeping our fleet up to date. And as technologies change also, it makes them more safer because every year it seems like there's a new standard that comes out that says, hey, you do this, it'll make it a little bit safer. You get into an older bus, as many might have ridden them, the seats used to be very low. You get into new buses, they're very high. Standards continue to change, they continue to improve to make students safer. Mechanically, we spend a lot of money to upkeep these engines. Since I've been here in 4 months, I've already had to replace 2 transmissions, 1 engine, and a lot of other stuff on our buses because they're just breaking down. They're reaching the end of service life and stuff like that. New routing system, as I said, We're currently using a SQL system. I would like to go to a web-based system. For me and my team, that would make it a lot easier to be able to access it. SQL, you have to install it on your computer. You can only access it from certain systems. With a web-based system, you'll be able to access that anywhere with the proper identification, of course. For my drivers, they'll have a tablet system. Communication will become a lot more efficient. We won't always have to rely on our radio system, which currently, even in certain areas, creates shadows from the radio, so they can't talk all times. This will get rid of a lot of that small chatter that happens on radios. It'll also create a GPS system that can go and show them exactly where they're at. A lot of them now have pictures, so when their student scans on the bus, it shows them their face, make sure they're the correct student. And then if they scan on the wrong bus, it'll tell them, you're on the wrong bus. You need to either go to this bus, or the driver can override it to approve it so that maybe they're riding home with a friend or something like that. And then, of course, the parent app. Parents will be able to track the bus and be able to track where their kids get on and off the bus. And then at the school level, a lot of this technology they will have access to, so they can see where their kids are at too. So they might not need to call dispatch and say, hey, the student, we don't know where they're at. They'll be able to look into that system also. So yeah, so my recap is pretty simple. I just would like some new buses and a new rapid center. And that's pretty much all I have. Do I have any questions? I was told I had 3 minutes.
Yes. Yeah. So absolutely love the idea of being able to track and get the scan and get on and off the bus. How much longer, or I'll say delays, but how much longer does it take for schools to have implemented this? I'm thinking of like a bus pulls up to an elementary school. You've got 50 kids, kindergartners, first graders, I don't know, trying to scan their ID badges. How much longer does it take to fill up a bus?
Great question. So my prior district I came from, I helped implement a system similar. Theirs was a barcode system, and it added about 15 to 20 seconds per kid. The system I'm looking at is an RFID. That one's 2 to 3 seconds per kid. They just walk up. Depending on the strength of the scanner, they don't have to touch it. It's able to scan the body wherever it's at, and it registers it that way.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
As a parent of the beautiful kids, what happens then if the kid doesn't have their ID of that?
Yeah, great question. So a lot of times the tablet will, when you pull to the stop, it'll show all the kids listed there, and the driver can then just click on their name, and then it registers them as they're getting on the bus. So some of them have pictures, so it's even faster. So you see the picture, you click on the picture. Other of them just have names.
Is there a cost associated to retrofitting buses for these scanners?
Yes, everything is built into that $600,000 ask that I'm asking for. Is that includes the routing system and then the tablets and installing those on all the buses.
So I'm sure that I would imagine that whether the SQL system or the new system, in addition to the one-time setup costs, there's a monthly service fee.
Yes, and it's monthly or yearly.
Monthly or yearly. Fair enough. How much larger is the web-based system versus the current system?
I'm not seeing a huge difference. Currently, we're spending $60,000 on GPS, and we're spending another $40,000 on that other system. Put those together, and that pretty much covers the new system.
Nice.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So if we're buying new buses every 2 years, does that 600,000 include moving them from the old buses to? I'm assuming that's what you do.
Yes. Well, the tablets themselves will be moved. And then when you purchase a new bus, a lot of that's the little things like the hardware and like cameras, they're included in the purchase price, so it'll be just built into it when it's delivered to us.
I love the tablet thing. See that being a huge success. I want to know about, like, you were talking about just being more linear, more consistent from year to year buying buses.
Mm-hmm.
How many buses do we need to buy a year, like over the next 10 years?
That's a great question.
What is the cost, like the standard cost for a bus? So how much are you spending?
So my projection when I built it is we need on average about 13 to 15 buses a year to stay on track to be able to keep our fleet active. Now, I'm not asking for that full because we do get depreciation money from the state each year to help pay for that. On average, it's about $1 million to pay for that. So that would help us get us to that 13 to 15 year. When it comes to prices, you could say, hey, a bus was this much, and then it increases by about 3% each year. We've not seen that recently. Last year, a bus was $199,000. This year, it's 15% more, and $229,000. And so we've seen this big leap. Next year, if you do a diesel engine, because of the emission standards, it's going to increase the cost of the vehicle by $30,000 just for the engine alone. So there's some big leaps that are happening in the next couple of years that are going to make it a little inconsistent, but on average, it's about 3%, and currently they're $230,000.
So we don't have the infrastructure for it, however, what does an electric bus system look like for?
Yeah, so currently we have 3 that we did in conjunction with PGE grant. And we're actually working to do another one with them for another 3 out of our new facility. A new electric school bus, if we were to purchase it ourselves, is about $450,000. When we work in conjunction with like PGE, they cover the difference from what a normal bus would cost up to the purchase price. And then infrastructure, they cover that also. But if you were to do it yourself, level 2 charger, which is kind of the standard mid-range, it's usually about $30,000 to install one of those.
Brian wanted me to ask, are you going to have a pool in your
It's a callback. I like it, John.
Oh, yes.
So if the bond is setting aside money to buy these buses every year, are there like certain protections? Like, I don't understand how that kind of works. It's not all getting spent. Like, could it possibly be rerouted? Is that one thing?
I mean, you probably have to ask somebody different if it could be rerouted in that sense. I don't know the answer to that. I can tell you I will spend it if it's for buses. That's where that 13 or 12, 10 to 12, just because of the price of a bus fluctuates, that sometimes I can do maybe 11 and a half. Sometimes I can do 12, just depends on what the cost is of that year, kind of thing. So, that it's just because of the fluctuation, most of that, what I'm asking for would be spent on the buses.
Scott, did you want to say anything about that? How we might be able to retain some of the bond interest or bond maintenance fees to be able to account for that $2 million, if that is something that we ultimately put into our bond?
There is a scenario where we can do that. I think when we have Piper in the next session, we can explore the edges of some of these kinds of things and talk about how we might potentially.
And one thing I forgot to mention is this transportation, while we talk about, population declining or flatlining, we continue to see our needs rising. We've been asked to support a lot of school programs, which has been a great addition. CTE during our midday. We offer after-school activities to all our school in the afternoon. After school is out to help increase participation in whatever we can. And we do as many trips as we can support with our schools. And we want to be there. We want to make sure our students have access to everything we want. And I think that having up-to-date safer buses will definitely accomplish that too.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rusty.
Saida?
Yeah, so Saida.
And maybe Scott. Yes.
All right, I'm going to briefly talk about 2 things that we didn't include in the facilities presentation or the safety presentation. We just decided to bundle it as facilities and safety fleet replacement. So we have staff members and vehicles on the road 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They show up in the morning, our trades, whether it's a electrician or carpenters or our HVAC staff, and they get into their Sprinter vans and they go and work on their work orders throughout the district. At around 3:00 in the afternoon, 3:30, we have our night patrol staff arrive, and they get into the vehicle, and you may see them patrolling our schools all night long. On weekends, 24 hours a day. Sometimes we have emergencies in the evening, something breaks and our vans are out and about. We have groundskeepers that are in trucks and maintaining the greenery around the district. And then we have our supervisors also in trucks, especially in the wintertime. They are loading their trucks with de-icer to make sure that the sidewalks are safe. So when students and staff show up after a major storm, they are able to walk into the building. So you remember the number that we have for a budget for facilities? Does anyone remember that number? No, 2.5 million a year for all maintenance. So buying a fleet and upgrading fleets, it's just not in the budget. We were able to purchase 2 used vehicles because we turned in 2 vehicles for surplus. They were end of life and too dangerous for our staff to drive. So we were able to purchase 2 vehicles last year and 2 vehicles this year. 4 vehicles we turned in for surplus and we were able to replace. But there are 28 vehicles that are needing replacement in the next 7 years. Within the next 7 years, they will all be ends of life. The mileage is too high, and they work them really hard. They're on the road constantly. And so for facilities and maintenance, we're looking at approximately 1.1 million. That's a combination of new and used. We tend to look for newer used vehicles with low mileage, because as soon as they drive off the lot, we know that the car depreciates, and there are some really good vans, and one is maybe pulling into the parking lot right now. And so the most recent ones we bought were a good deal. So we try to get the best deal. Same with our safety fleet. We had 4 vehicles. 1 went to surplus. We never replaced that vehicle. We found that there wasn't a need. At any given time, there are 3 public safety staff members working at the same time. So what we need are 3 vehicles. We don't need the 4th vehicle necessarily. So we brought our number down from 4 to 3. That's the approximate cost. These will last us beyond this next bond if we were to purchase them over the course of the next 5 years. Questions about vehicle replacement? Okay. And I'm going to turn it over to Scott to talk about an expansion.
Okay, I know some of you know we have a print shop because there's customers of it in the room, but and Melissa probably spoke last time, sorry I couldn't make that one, but a little bit about the CTE connection of the print shop, which is certainly important with our kids. But there's another kind of unique part of the print shop that you may not know, and that is it's actually an enterprise account for the district. So print shops have been in the news a lot lately. They're a pretty classic economies of scale function, whereas essentially they're heavily capitalized. You buy these very expensive machines, and then the more volume you run, the more you can drive down costs. And so we have had significant interest, including from our city friends. We now service Portland Public, and there are several more that I can't quite talk about yet, but are under negotiation of people, government entities coming, mostly school districts, to us to take advantage of this service. And why I think it's unique here, and some of the things we're discussing for the bond is because Print Shop then pays these dollars back over time. We're able to offer very competitive rates. By the way, we strictly limit ourselves only to districts and government entities. So we're looking taxpayers. We won't go to Intel or something like that, or we'd be outside and probably unethical. So we stay within the confines of helping taxpayer dollars, offer very competitive rates to those other entities that frankly they can't probably get anywhere else. At the same time, we make enough that we can pay back over time our investments in this area. So it really stretches those dollars you see listed here. In effect, they come back eventually into the district's budget, almost like we financed it in the period of bond. So I just wanted to highlight that for you because it is a little different than the other things that we talk about in here. And we think it's something that we want to continue to support both its growth and some of those other players in the region.
I got a question. Yeah. So you mentioned that when you services for local government entities that money moves back, how long does it take for you to pay that $6.9?
Yeah, great. Very, very good and great question. So I'll give an answer. The answer, real short answer is it depends on the growth, obviously. But I would say, if we sort of continued where we are now, just sort of rolled that forward, probably and some of those entities came in this past summer, so we got a full year. But we're probably talking like a 4 to 5 year payback on the lower end of the numbers. If there'd be longer for the hiring, but again, if we were to invest, let's say, the full 10, that probably means that we've got some of those other big contracts, so now we scale more, and so that's going to accelerate the rate at which we pay those dollars back. That's why it's complicated, right? But just, I would say CFO math, it's sort of in that sort of ballpark. Yeah.
What's the lifespan of the equipment?
It depends on the equipment. And here's why I'll go full disclosure, right? There's a person that works for me, Dave Bryson, who's our print shop operations manager. He's the real expert. I'm a little dangerous as the CFO, but I can see on the replacement cycle that a couple of the real big machines we seem to be replacing at about a 5 to 7 year kind of cadence. So I'm sure, again, it depends on the machine, at least the big expensive players. It seems to be in that ballpark. I can tell.
With this investment, Scott, help reduce our in-district costs with the
Still, you're a good straightening. Thanks. Yeah. You're welcome. Thank you. I forgot about that part. In addition to the enterprise side and the kids side, we absolutely, because obviously we support our own district needs, that's why this all started, and we substantially get lower costs with our own needs in the district. And in fact, one of the things we're looking at doing, and we actually do this report in public now, is as we look at curriculum purchases in the future, of course, a lot of those vendors like to sell you the whole textbook, the hard textbook, because they make more, they can sell us for more, right? Make more. We don't actually need that. If we just had a digital version, we can make our own textbooks just as well as they can, maybe even better in some cases. So that'll be interesting as we see curriculum come up, and I know there's people involved in that in the room. It's tough because the vendors don't necessarily want to give that up, but we're starting to look at ways in which we can utilize this kind of capability to help us save money and things like that. And those are very expensive purchases. So even if you save 20-30%, it's very substantial over time. Yeah. Anything else? Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. So, perfect. So we're going to move into some group discussions. And then I'm going to bring us back together at 6 o'clock here when we wrap up. But you should have some table captains at your groups that we're going to be taking notes during your discussion. But this is a chance just to start sense making. We got a lot of information tonight, a lot of different ideas. And this is a chance to really start saying, okay, thinking through these buckets, what is standing out as big priorities? What do we have additional questions about? Or what more do we want to share as we help start moving toward consensus? So again, tonight's really focused on the what. And we're going to be moving more towards what the what means in terms of the apps after this discussion here this evening. So go ahead and jump into your groups. I'll bring us back together in about 12 minutes.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Just wanted to check in to see if there was any questions or anything that you wanted to share based off of what you heard this evening from the groups along these questions, and I'm happy to help take notes. Ellie and Jeremy, I know you guys are listening in, but if there's anything you wanted to share, feel free to jump off mute or drop in chat, whatever would be most helpful for you.
Evan, I don't really have any questions, but other than, is it possible to get copies of all the slides from all the different, okay, perfect.
Definitely happy to share those.
Thank you so much.
No problem. Yeah, Kelly, in fact, if you want to shoot me an email, put my email in the chat here, but then I can get those linked your way.
Oh, perfect. Okay, I'll do that now.
Okay. I'm going to go around real quick, but I'll jump back in to check chat just to see if there's anything that we want to share on those. But I'll be right back in just a moment.